And now for a look back to World War II and D-Day, the beginning of the end for Hitler's brutal Nazi conquest of Europe. On June 6, 1944, American and Allied troops carried out what was and may forever be history's largest air and seaborne invasion. Historian Kenneth C. Davis is author of the popular Don't Know Much About History series, and he's here with more about that longest day. Good morning.
Good morning. Always a pleasure.
To start with, how pivotal was that day for the war?
It was a true turning point. That word is overused many times. You have to remember, a lot of us are getting on in years, and this is a long time ago now. But in 1939, Hitler had taken over all of Europe. We were fighting the Japanese, of course, after 1941. This was the beginning of the toehold in France that would eventually end Hitler's rule over Europe, and it was a long and costly battle.
It was fascinating to read in your research that June 6th was not the original day that Eisenhower picked.
No, it wasn't. And by the way, D-Day simply means it's an Army designation, D for day, of an invasion. So June 6th hadn't been picked. Eisenhower had a range of dates that all depended on weather and tides and a full moon. They came together perfectly on the 5th, but the weather wasn't good, so that's why it was switched to the 6th.
The Germans were, in fact, expecting an invasion. We spend a lot of time and energy trying to make them think it was coming somewhere else.
The deception phase, a whole operation involving fake inflatable tanks, for instance, ships going in a different direction, was very, very elaborate. We had German spies that had been turned, in other words, double agents, so false information was being fed to Germany. And the Allies were able also to determine whether the Germans knew, because we had broken their codes. So this was all carefully scripted, incredibly planned for years, but still all up to the circumstances of the moment. Eisenhower says just before it goes off, "I hope to God I know what I'm doing."
Wow.
In the first hours of that invasion, there was an incredible death toll. What happened immediately?
When those soldiers, there were 5 different beaches, 5 landing beaches. The worst of them was Omaha Beach, where Americans landed. British troops landed elsewhere. Canadian troops landed on some beaches. They called it immediately Hell Beach because the casualty rates were so astonishing. The Germans were dug in and placed with machine guns and artillery. It was horrific, and they had to get claw their way onto this beach. They hoped to be off the beach by the end of the day. They weren't even close to that.
There were 2,000 Americans, I think, lost on Omaha Beach. Is that right?
That's just in a few hours.
Yeah.
By the end of the day, it was 4,000. Eventually, those numbers grew. You saw the president at the cemetery where there are 9,000 buried.
What were the expectations in terms of casualties?
Well, this is interesting. They expected 12% casualties overall, and that would have been, we're talking about an invasion force of over 200,000 men. So the casualty rate in the end is actually lower. They expected the rates for the people at the tip of the spear, as they call it, to be 25%, and that was much closer to accurate for those men. And when we say men, we have to remember, these were boys. These are teenagers. By 1944, half of the soldiers fighting for the U.S. were teenagers.
Right. Kenneth C. Davis.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me. Every time we come back to it, the scale of it is just breathtaking.